When thinking about outsourcing partners and post-completion, what standards and safeguards should firms look for to ensure compliance and quality?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think probably goes back to a decent amount of what Adil has just mentioned, is partnering with organisations that understand the process, and not just understand it, but do it on a daily basis. So generally the standard could be a bit higher. Some conveyancers, rightly or wrongly, kind of see post-completion as outside of their, of the transaction, because maybe the bill has been paid, etc. So it's really, outsourcing to those that have full understanding of all the process, but it's also working with them so that they can, understand the process that we might have already as a firm. So, in terms of, how we want to work together, do we do certain checks at certain stages, or do we pass over, as Adil said, the whole of the post-completion, or just limit it to certain parts of it? But it's also things like making sure that they're embedded into our case management system. So, they're not working, on their own outsourcing. So the GDPR regulations and all those kind of key security concerns from a client, that their data isn't being exposed. So it's all things like that. But as I say, it becomes, we've probably talked about it a little bit, maybe in part one, of those partnerships we build. So partnerships with the Land Registry, but outsourcing post-completion work is just an extension of that as a partnership. As Adil mentioned, it's an extension of us as a firm if we outsource, and obviously, and we are therefore, held to the same standards, and clients expect post-completion work to be done in the same standard as their conveyancing transaction. So it's finding the right partner to make sure that we can meet those goals.
So do you sort of check qualifications or certifications, for example, compliance, ISO data, and how can firms verify that outsourced work meets required standards, do you think?
Yeah, so we because any company that we outsource with, or institution we outsource with, they work on our case management system. So we have all the same security in place. But similar to what Adil said, we have some experience with Auxilio. So we know that they are recruiting people with UK law degrees, or degrees, accredited degrees anyway. So, and again, that conversation about the language barrier is less of a concern from our perspective, because of the work that Adil and his team do. But then in terms of being able to sort of verify that they're meeting the required standards, KPIs obviously are really important. We can track every metric that we decide to, in terms of timeframes from AP1 submission to registration, from completion to AP1 submission, requisitions. We can track data from how many requisitions maybe our in-house team as opposed to an outsourced team are doing, and spot checks of files. It's really important. Our post-completion team that we have internally work very closely with any outsourced team that we do. As I say, they are an extension of our internal team. So and everybody gets tracked on the same metrics. So it's really important. There's no differentiation, between those two.
Okay, thanks. So given the regulators' focus on conveyancing quality, what would happen if an error occurred in outsourced work? And I think you said you do deal with Auxilio, so that probably hasn't happened to you, but if it did, and what compliance measures, such as strict data protocols and supervision, are advisable?
Yeah, so we have, as I say, we outsource, we work with Auxilio, but we also have an internal team. But we have, the key thing is around supervision. So we have a team of our head of post-completion operations. We have post-completion managers that work alongside all of the team members that do post-completion, and say supervision is across the board. And that stems from our internal team. So, but it goes back to making sure our systems are used. So there's no, we all know that all the work is being done on the same platform. So the data shouldn't be different across the submissions. Everyone's working from the same place. But also say that the data is not external. But the familiarisation with UK requirements, lender's handbook, but the ability to be able to contact clients or third parties for any information that is necessary, we know that can happen from an outsourced team because of the UK qualifications and understanding of the requirements and the process that is post completion. Because it's not easy. there's a lot to it. It's sometimes we wish it was more straightforward than it is, but sometimes it can involve lengthy conversations, sometimes many months after completion. And it's making sure that those people that are dealing with it fully understand what they're asking for, why they need it, and being able to communicate that with whichever third party or client they are talking to. So, but when things if they do go wrong, it's just open communication. Being able to establish why it's gone wrong, being able to understand what we can do to resolve it, and and how we do that. So, I think as a team internally and our work with Auxilio, we have that open communication. I think the team speak pretty much on a daily basis, many times a day, I'd imagine, just in relation to that quality control that we put in place with them.
Okay, thanks. Adil, if I can just bring you back in on that point. So what would happen your side of the fence if an error occurred? We're all humans, thankfully, still in this business. It's not robots yet. So what would happen from your side of the fence? How would you deal with that?
Yeah, right. So, I think the critical bit is open and transparent communication, right? So errors happen. I think the critical bit is to make sure that the error doesn't happen again, right? So if you've made the error, you've made the error. If it's fixable, obviously our teams will correct it. If it's an error that is not fixable immediately, we will make sure that we log it. We have process manuals. We spoke about this earlier, mapping processes. We have manuals, that tell the team exactly what steps they need to take. I mean, to be honest, people aren't referring to these manuals every day because they're pretty experienced, but the point is that it's something we log, right? And so if there's an error that's been made, it's logged. So if we have a team of 10 and one person's made an error, all 10 will be made aware that error should not be made again, right? So it's just making sure that these things are addressed. And I think there's also we regularly get into a practice with clients, including Taylor Rose, where we sit down and review cases. So it'll either be depends on the cadence agreed with the client, but weekly sessions or fortnightly sessions to go through reasons behind errors, what we've done to mitigate those errors going forward, etc. So I think and I've mentioned this earlier as well about sort of that having that positive feedback loop, and sort of that self-reinforcing rhythm within QC and QA.
Yeah, and I think that's what I would want to hear as well, that if an error happens, and they are rare by the sound of it, they're taken very seriously, and everyone should learn by their mistakes and they shouldn't happen again.